Welcome to Consumer Connections, a podcast series brought to you by Scylla. I'm your host, James Piecowye, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Faisal Khan.
Consumer Connections is your guide to navigating the ins and outs of marketing and insights. With a special focus on the Arab world and its global implications, we're thrilled to introduce you to a range of experts and leaders from the domains of strategy, marketing, and insights who will share their thoughts and real-life experiences with us. The theme of this podcast is mastering the art of effective marketing in the Arab world. Faisal, who is our guest?
Today we're delighted to welcome Shyam Sunder. Shyam is very well known in the marketing sphere across the Middle East. He has over 25 years of marketing and communications experience across retail, F&B, FMCG, banking, and real estate sectors. He has done a lot of path-breaking and award-winning work across sectors and regions. In his last role, he was an independent consultant for brands in F&B, eyewear, healthcare sectors, while driving growth for a digital marketing service provider. And prior to that, he was heading marketing for Centerpoint at Landmark Group, one of the largest retail brands in the GCC, which all of us living here are very familiar with. And now, he has entered the exciting world of travel and tourism as VP of Marketing at TABO.com, one of the leading global travel distribution platforms. Welcome, Shyam.
You bring an enormous wealth of experience to this podcast today. First question for you is 25 years plus in the marketing and insights industry. Mm-hmm. You've gone through a variety of different positions, a variety of different contexts that you've been working in marketing. How does it all link together? Does it work together, or are they very different types of industries that demand different types of marketing skills?
Firstly, thank you for having me here. It's a good question, but not a kind of straight answer. They are very different. At the same time, I find there's a lot of commonality across sectors and, what we do in marketing to these audiences. So for me, if you look at my journey, I started with in advertising, and most of my early years was in FMCG and retail banking, and that gave me a good grounding of brand management itself. Although it was from the advertising perspective, I used to work with marketers, very, very, very skilled and very experienced, and the value of research. And from there, when you move to other sectors, one could see how different each industry looks at their audiences and how they want to get across to those audiences in terms of marketing. There's some fundamentals which are common to every sector, every product category you work for, which is the brand fundamentals are the same. You got to do your research. You have to create what we say positioning for the brand and identity and purpose. All these are common across. It doesn't matter which industry you are in, but what keeps changing is the audiences change, their behavior change, and the mediums change. So it's just the audience and the distribution which keeps changing from every industry. So, but again, I keep coming. Every time I join a new industry, I find myself going back to fundamentals, and then it's like revisiting the fundamentals and then trying to find what's the best, the most efficient and the most effective way of marketing to that audience.
So it all comes down to fundamentals.
It all comes down to fundamentals. That hasn't changed for the last 50 years. A brand is a brand, the brand values, the whole positioning has not changed. What you have to mean to the customer. And today we talk about, the why of the business. So there has been, obviously there's been an evolution on that, but it's not as much as, let's say, media and basically the way you get to the customer has changed dramatically, and the formats, and with technology coming in, then how do you tell a story in 3 seconds? Correct. Is really the challenge.
I think that's a beautiful perspective, because we always talk about change. We talk about how things are changing, but I think Shyam's really telling us that some things haven't changed for the last 50 years. Your fundamentals are same, and I think that's a beautiful perspective, that in all that change, don't kind of revisit your fundamentals and stick to them, and you'll get it right.
Yeah.
Well, I love the aspect that again, everything has really stayed the same, but you must have seen that you have far more tools now
Yeah.
to be able to tap into.
Yeah. Again, I've gone through this entire journey of how research has evolved. And, when we started, like I used to manage two different, very different kind of brands. One was a detergent brand, and the other was a homegrown brand out of India, which was into cosmetics. Very dynamic, very exciting FMCG categories. But research from, at that time when we did research, Cont and Call and all that, and focus groups were still there. I'm talking about the mid 90s, and even today, although research has evolved dramatically, I know there's been a lot of tech are now used, and especially during COVID now, we get to do everything online. It's very convenient, but still, I would say, even as of 3 years, 4 years back, I still value a lot of the focus groups. The in-depth conversations you have with customers, and kind of freewheeling conversations where you then really get to understand the customer's lives and customer behavior, and that's where insights comes from. So for me, again, it comes back to there are certain research techniques which are still relevant today.
There's a lot of complementary tools now, and I think that's the key thing.
That is absolutely right. I think whether it's marketing, whether it's marketing research, the entire sphere, it'll keep evolving in terms of technologies. You'll still have approaches, but I think there's some things like you talked about, fundamentals, even from research perspective, meeting your consumer face to face,
Absolutely.
and looking at them, seeing the non-verbal reactions will always be relevant. And I think 50 years from now also you'll want to meet the consumer and say, hey, what do you think about my product? But of course, you'll use a lot of these technologies also that helps you look at the bigger picture and enables you to get things done faster and take strategic decisions. But yeah, I don't think one's here to replace the other. It's more about complementing and enriching what we already have.
The Arab region is pretty complex when we start talking about marketing.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the challenges in marketing in this region?
So when you have a demographic, like say, let's take UAE, which has got a very fragmented kind of audiences. You have so many people from so many nationalities. So there, it becomes a challenge on what's the most, what's the medium and language and cultural aspects comes through in terms of when you create the communication and marketing. So it's a bit of a challenge. It is in a way homogeneous, but in a way it is not. Let's say if you're talking to a South African audience who come from that region, then you've got to understand what really takes with them, and then and then you look at a region like a country like Saudi Arabia, and there I feel there it becomes easier to curate marketing content relevant to that audience. So for me, it's about context from a cultural perspective, which makes that difference. And that's where the challenge is also. Like when you talk about Arabs, they're so different. If you start looking at them very closely, their dialect, the way they dress, the way they eat, and it's quite different. We may think they all look and behave the same. It's not.
So how do you account for that in your marketing strategies?
So we do have a mix of what we call global, let's say what we call pan-Arab kind of strategy and approach. And then we do have very local content which comes from that region, and maybe let's say for example, the use of influencers. That then becomes a good voice of the brand for our customers to relate to. So it's always it needs to work like globally and locally. It's a good mix, but when you start looking, let's say you look at GCC versus Levant, huge difference. It's like I can't even tell you. It's a huge difference. You just go on. It's an hour flight at times, and then you say, "Oh my God, where have I landed?" It's so different. Religiously, culturally, everything they do, they eat, drink, their social lives, and the way they consume media is also very different. And then at the end of the day, it's about finding that what you call the connection, the finding the right like pulling the right chords and making sure that your brand is resonating to that audience.
I think what you're saying is understanding them at a universal pan-Arab is the word you used.
Yeah.
At that level. So I think that's critical because a lot of strategy cannot
Yeah.
split out. But then you need to keep in mind the different target audiences within that and then have a personalized approach and then through means like influencer marketing, communication, and other channels where you can kind of pick out a specific group of people and kind of target the Levantanians, the Saudis, the expats living in these countries.
Yeah. Even between Kuwait, Qatar, and then you go to, these are small markets, Oman and Bahrain is very small, but you just got to find ways to keep it very local. And we've seen we've seen data to prove that the more and more you can get content which is relates to them, the better is the performance. Also, this is directly related. So it's a challenge, especially when you don't have enough resource and budget. But you got to, if you're a brand which needs to be relatable to these audiences, then you have to make that effort.
You've led brands, you've led marketing initiatives, you've seen them as your peers doing it. Are there some examples that stand out for you that did a really good job in connecting with these Arab consumers?
So there are several examples, but Ramadan is a month. We call it in marketing, we call it the Super Bowl of the Middle East. Yeah, so that's where you spend the most in the year, and it is in fact it's the single biggest month of the year for retail, for fashion retail, and for many categories. So when we looked at Ramadan, we started looking at our customer, and we started looking at data, and we found that Ramadan is not just a 30-day, but it's actually 45 days. You got to there is a shopping behavior which changes from let's say day minus 45 to then the last day of Ramadan. Then we get into Eid. So one good thing we at Centerpoint did was to phase the marketing. Basically, we kind of mapped the product and the marketing quite well to again to be contextual to the audience and what the audience is consuming. So let's say pre-Ramadan, there's a fair amount of home, furniture, furnishing, which is purchased. So therefore, as a business, we would then make sure that our content is centered around the home before Ramadan, and then you have the first 10 days of Ramadan, which is quite kind of silent, but then you start feeding content which gets into the fashion space, and slowly you get into cosmetics. So there is what we did is we looked at data week after week, and then we made sure that it's not just one Ramadan campaign, one size fits all, but it's a series of themes and content which could then find context with the audience at that time, and that's, I think that was a very good approach to a month which looks like 1 month, but it's not just a month. It's like let's say it would be 3 or 4 in one kind of a month. So that was an interesting case which comes to my mind to really understand how the customer behaves and what's the trigger, and then how would marketing then cater to that customer week after week.
Is that a great example of how research and insights influence the marketing campaign?
This purely comes from data. There was a lot of data, and to look into, and once we started looking into the data, and we started really going into the detail of what customers buy at what time of the month and what time of the day, and then everything becomes so
you would get really granular then.
You get granular. You have to get granular, because let's say Ramadan, much of, let's say 40% of the shopping, or even more, I would say, let's say the other way around, like 60% of the shopping happens from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. So I'm not saying all the marketing needs to be done at that time, but then there are times when the customer would be kind of ready to take in, absorb the communication. So one needs to keep that in mind on where and what, and one needs to communicate, especially during that month. That month is a very interesting month, and I've never seen any other month where things change so dramatically. Like you have 12 months, but that one those 45 days is very different to the rest of the year.
And is B2B marketing as exciting? Considering you're in a B2B technology business now. So I'm just wondering whether...
So much written about B2B marketing is the graveyard of marketers, and you just don't get to do much. It's not about excitement, but it's also there's not much of what do you call, the big bucks isn't there, and but I must say in the last 2 years I have seen a huge change in the way B2B marketers are now approaching the business. So
give us an example.
A great example is Accenture. In fact, a better example would be MasterCard. 90% of MasterCard business is B2B.
Wow.
It's only 10% which is a bit of B2C.
I didn't know that.
I wouldn't have ever thought about
That's a revelation to me.
Because MasterCard, whom are they? Their partners are banks. So and then, but what MasterCard does so well is that they make sure that their brand is not just visible to the end customer, the traveler or the shopper, whoever it is, but they strike a chord with the end customer, and then the demand then comes back to. So it's like B2C to B. Very interesting case, where they truly build brands. For example, travel. When you think of travel, you think of MasterCard. Look at the association. You're so strong. So for a traveler to have a card, a bank card, which is a MasterCard, makes it, it makes so much sense. So I think this is a great example. So what is happening is things are opening up. It's not about just a very focused, kind of tight kind of audience or segment. I think B2B businesses have learned, or I have realized that it's important to keep the end customer in mind. Accenture is another great example. Why do we know Accenture? Because they have communicated or connected with us, and then we get to buy that product. So Accenture is another great example. It comes through the trade to us. So so now in the travel space where I'm working now, we are doing that. We have a certain business to business relationship with our stakeholders. Let's say for us, travel agents are our buyers, and our suppliers, which we call our hotels and airlines and cruise and all that. So, but what we want to do now is to slowly engage the traveler, but through the channel. There's no point in going directly to the customer and promoting a brand, because they can't buy on our platform. But we are finding ways that can we find a mechanism where we get the traveler also to buy into why a travel agent. That kind of approach is being now attempted. So the other big change I'm seeing, and people are talking about it, is that there is no more B2B or B2C. At the end of the day, it's a human to human. They say H to H, or let's say P to P. So
how do you deal with that rethinking? Because B2B, B2C, now P2P.
Absolutely. Now P2P is that what happens is, there is this person from one organization, from one business, who would want to have a conversation with a person in the other business. You understand? So it's not business to business talking. But when it becomes more, let's say, emotion driven, human driven, what we call, how do you humanize a B2B brand? And this is how, when the lens is changed to saying that from B2B to P2P, that today people prefer listening to people and not a brand. That's where the whole dynamics change. And when you have that lens, then you're looking at, okay, we are not just talking to a faceless organization, we are talking to someone there who has got a certain demographic and profile, behavior, and then the whole game changes. Trust me on this. So we are doing this right now. We are looking at how do we humanize a brand, and there is a person there, or there are a set of decision makers or influencers within an organization, and how do you then reach out, connect with them as a brand. And therefore, we would, let's say, a platform like LinkedIn. If you notice the behavior on LinkedIn, it's quite obvious that the highest engagement of for a post would come from someone who has posted than the company posting.
Correct.
So let's say if my CEO posts a certain announcement, and if the company, there's a huge difference, because people relate to him. People don't really relate to the business. So I'm saying that it's a very interesting move, and we are seeing B2B marketers now quickly evolving into some B2C methods, and looking at what is the best of we can bring from that kind of marketing principles, or into this, and then how do you then find the best way of optimizing and making it as efficient as possible.
Big disruptor right now is AI. How's that factoring into your P2P?
So for me personally, technology, great technology, behind great technology is great people.
It's a common thread through everything you're saying. It all comes down to the people.
People, because you see when you see a great platform, or you see a great tech product, one must one must realize that, oh my God, there's some amazing talent behind this, which has made it look so good and so easy to use, and so convenient. How meaningful is it? Is it going to make a business impact, and is it going to kind of accelerate the way we do things, or make especially, is it going to make us more efficient? So that's where AI comes into the picture, and the possibilities are amazing. I must tell you, it's really overwhelming right now. But there's great use, like they say, great responsibility. So I feel that a lot is left to us to understand what it can do, and then adopt it in a meaningful manner.
And where do then skill sets play a role? Because you're constantly, then suddenly AI has come, then how do you kind of make sure you're upgrading yourself, updating yourself as an individual to be able to make best use of it?
No, that's for sure. Technology is such that it's constantly evolving. It has to constantly evolve. That's the game. Now, as humans, we are the ones creating the technology. So there's already a group of people out there who is looking at what's next. For us, let's come back to for marketing and marketers. It's all about, you have to constantly keep your eyes and ears open. There's so much of listening, and there's so much of research one needs to do to just keep up with what's happening, understand what is it which is going around us, and how it has to have relevance to our business, and it should help the business at the end of the day.
Where do you see things going then? If you were to crystal ball gaze the region with marketing and insights?
See, one thing we missed out speaking is how much we have evolved. Like audiences have evolved so much over a period of time. Technology has kind of driven that change. The sheer choice of brands we have, we are spoiled of choice.
There's so much noise. There's so much
noise,
distraction.
so much of distraction. Everything's being thrown at you, and at the same time, we are a time poor world. We live in.
It just makes me want to hold my head what you're saying with all that.
It's a very time. Unfortunately, we're living in a very time poor kind of a world where we just don't have. We can't spend more than 3 seconds or 5 seconds before we're distracted to what is next.
Correct.
So this whole thumb stopping or whatever you call it, it's really that's where for me the marketing challenge is about how effective is your brand, and therefore this all that is happening, like you said, the noise and all the clutter and everyone kind of trying to shout. There is definitely a challenge on what really makes that difference, or what will make the impact. Scrolling and therefore how do you tell your story in a few seconds is now the biggest challenge. Reading itself is a rare habit now. People don't want to read, so therefore we are living in a visual world, which is fine. Living in a visual world is great. And that's why you have, and the other big change is content which is real, authentic, user generated. Audience don't want to see brands anymore communicating to them. They want to see people communicating to people. So that has dramatically changed. Gone are the days of very well manicured, big, high cost shoot campaigns, and all that is gone today. The medium is social media, and therefore one needs to, and they themselves have created this short format, skippable, and so there's so many challenges today in terms of how do you make the impact. You're spending $1, what are you getting back? Have you made the right impact? And then the whole clutter, and so it's really, I really, as much as I feel for the creative community, I think they have now realized, or they've risen to the fact that this is what it is, and then let's now think, or let's step out of the comfort zone, or let's innovate to see what can be clutter breaking. What can stop the thumb?
Do you have any tips?
There are no tips. For me, the top of the funnel continues to be paramount. Although there's a lot of focus on the bottom of the funnel to convert and to get the sale. Top of the funnel is where if you don't create that impact at the top, if your audience is not going to resonate to your brand, you have lost there itself. You have lost the audience. So how do you create compelling, authentic content which is going to change behavior? So for me, a lot of the marketing in the last few years have been very focused on the bottom of the funnel, tactics and discounts and things which kind of influencers and affiliates, and there's a lot of that which is working, coupons and all that. But at the top of the funnel is where, again, how good are you as a brand marketer? How much do you know your brand? How much do you know your audience? And if you're not going to tell your story, which differentiates you from another brand, then that's really the starting and the ending point.
While you're doing that, in terms of your marketing initiatives and brand differentiation, what is the role? I mean, what is the balance? Where does instinct versus data come from? So how much is really based on data and how much is instinct of your personal understanding of the consumer?
I must say a lot has moved from the instinct, or gut, the gut feeling, to data-driven decisions. It has moved, and for the right reason. Today we have the luxury of having so much of data in the organization. What does it do? It tells you the story of your customer. How does your customer behave? Why did he churn? Or like, why did he drop off? Why did he spend so much time searching and did not? So and also across product, what's happening? One product, and then is there a kind of cross product pollination happening? So there's so much the data throws in terms of insights, and therefore a lot of decisions are data driven. But I must say that great leaders and great leaders, whether they are leaders of organizations or leaders of marketing, there is always going to be that gut feeling which is going to help you steer your decisions.
I think this coming from such a senior marketing person who's saying that take data-driven decisions versus taking instinct-based, at least, where
they go together. They work together.
They work together. But the fact that decision-making is moving towards data from gut, I think you've made my day. As someone in the market research industry, consumer intelligence, I think that's music to my ears.
No, as much as data is throwing a lot of insights to us, there's also the face-to-face research or customer listening we do. I spend a lot of time with I try to spend a lot of time with my customers. I'm a guy who, when you come from retail, you're always you want to be on the floor in the retail space, observing customers. Now, in this company I work for, which is TBO.com, I make it a point to do regular market visits. And when I go and sit face to face and have a conversation, I don't, I'm a very casual, it's a very casual, I just need to put my customer at rest. He doesn't have to be formal or, so we start a freewheeling conversation. And then when I start to understand certain aspects of his life and, for example, when I went to Indonesia, how do we try and get you out of your work and give you a good time, let's say a partner engagement event, and they came up with I said, what about sports? And I was talking to a very large women, it's a very women dominated kind of workforce there in Asia Pacific, and she said, listen, why don't you treat us to an iftar during Ramadan? It came from her. And then now we have done a series of iftars across all those regions which celebrate Ramadan. So that kind of which data would have thrown me that need of the customer. Okay. Again, in UAE, I was having conversation with lots of our customers, and most of them are from India. And the first thing they said is, listen, if you want to engage us, if you want to take us out, have a good time, give us a good time, then it's cricket. So we created this amazing property called TBO Cup, which is travel agent, a proper championship. So I'm saying that, so this is where it's when you do face to face, when you spend time with customers, listening to them, then you do get great ideas. 100%. As much as data will keep is more of tactics. So I think it's a good mix of both, and I think we're kind of blessed to have both in our company.
This has been a great conversation, Shyam.
Thank you so much.
We've learned a lot.
Thank you, Shyam. It was amazing to kind of hear you out. Thank you so much.
It's been great fun. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You have been listening to Consumer Connections, a podcast series powered by Scylla. Our guest has been Shyam Sunder, Vice President Marketing at TBO.com, and we have been talking about mastering the art of effective marketing in the Arab world.